let's talk about the system of the week. So this is interesting because oftentimes I see, a lot of development in TouchStone, a lot of people doing things, but then not enough implementation of it, not enough using of the documentation. And that's the most important thing. I mean, there's no point to document everything if you're not going to implement it and use it, manage it, make sure that people are following it. So if you struggle with that at all, try to pick something that's extremely useful for the company and simple enough to follow to get people used to using documentation. And just do a little bit of that. The best way to accomplish that is to use processes from our library. So pull over some key processes that happen in the business and then ask certain employees or departments to use them. So processes that people are asking for all the time or interested in are human resource ones. And these 4 here are awesome. Recruiting, interviewing, here's an administrative, and then onboarding. So this is a common issue with businesses. They don't know how to recruit and hire good employees. Once they're hired, they don't know how to onboard them in a way that makes them stay. So these processes, there's many more on HR in the Running the Business Library, but these are awesome processes to use. So starting with recruiting, there's a process in the library called recruiting. It's got numerous tools in it, and I don't have time to go through all of them, so I'm just going to kind of give you the essence of it. There's a work plan which just lays out basic how to place an ad, how to decide a vehicle for response. So you place an ad, somebody responds to the ad. What's that going to look like? How do you screen initial candidates with common questions? And we have examples of those questions. How do you decide who you're going to bring back for a longer interview? And how do you do all of this in a very objective way? So this ends with sending people a no thank you letter or scheduling an interview. So it's a simple step-by-step. Place an ad, decide where that ad needs to be placed, write a good ad, and we should have some example ads. Treat it like you're advertising for a new customer. Create an interesting ad. Create a vehicle for the candidate to respond. So you are systematizing, creating a process for recruitment here. So what's the vehicle for response? Decide how you're going to screen to those candidates. What we suggest is a short interview where you've looked at their resume, you know that they're qualified, you call them up. Who are you? Why do you want to work here? Here's a description of the position. So decide what your questions will be. 5-minute short interview. From that, decide who you're going to bring back for a longer interview and send no thank you letters. So there's tools all inside of here for how to do that. There's a voicemail script for a voicemail response vehicle when somebody responds to a recruitment ad. There's example recruitment ads and examples on how to write those ads. There's a short interview worksheet where the employees asked these questions over the phone or in person. Usually over the phone is the quickest way to screen through candidates that respond to an ad. So look through these tools, but your main objective here is to think of a step-by-step for recruiting. Make it a process that works, that brings in good candidates. Follow a system for it. Next step is interviewing. So there's an interview process here in the library. This is a technique called behavioral interviewing, which is really good. There's a step-by-step for how to think about how you're going to interview. There are sample questions for you to use. There's a checklist that can be filled out. There's scripts for how to explain what the interview is going to be like to the person, how to welcome them to the interview. There are score sheets for as you're sitting there with the clipboard, and I literally do this. I usually have my iPad out, and I've got TouchStone open, and I'm typing it into my iPad right into the control panel as I'm making notes when somebody's talking to me. The scorecards to make it objective. So it's not just, I don't like you just because I didn't like you in the first minute I met you. It's more objective than that. You're saying, how did they score with the interview questions? So again, this is like a whole methodology for interviewing where you're looking for certain behaviors and seeing if those match your business. They match what you're looking for. At the end of this, you go through the score sheets and then decide who you're going to hire based on that. Next step, once you've got this qualified candidate that you've put through a process of deciding, do they fit into this position and into your culture? This takes time. I think small businesses make huge hiring mistakes because they just don't spend enough time finding the right people. And it's so expensive not to do that. So just following these two basic processes if you don't have a system, it's going to be way better than what you're doing now. And if you do already have a system, I think that there's valuable things within here that would make your system better. This is a hiring administration process. So this has things like, how to review how to do reference checks, how to do testing if you need to, how to check driving records, rejection letters, how to scan a resume, things like that. And then this new employee onboarding, fabulous process. So there's these statistics that I ran across down here that I've probably shown before in other webinars. But it basically shows how hard it is on a business when they don't do proper onboarding. They go through the effort of finding good employees, and then they blow that employee's experience when they first come into the business. So this shows, this is the most striking one. The cost of losing an employee in the first year is 1.5 to 3 times their annual salary. The first 6 months, every new employee makes a decision about whether to stay or not. So bring your employees on in an effective way. Have it last 60 days until they have, or 90 days until they have their first review. So this has work plans in it for like how to prepare for the new employee when they're coming in to make them feel welcome. Even the smallest of companies should do this, even if it's just 1 or 2 people. What do you do on the first day? What's the training look like? So new employee orientation through all the HR things, quality kind of things like, introduce them to all the other people in the company, show them your org chart, your job descriptions, your TouchStone account, your strategic target, your goals. First 30 days, how are you going to train them? Train them on their job description. And then first 60 days, including all the way down to asking them for feedback and suggestions on how they felt in the first 60 days. So all of this can be customized. This is just to give you some basic tools on how to do effective onboarding. It's basically a process of doing the administrative things, the HR things, the socialization things, and then starting them in on effective training, thinking through what that training is, and using the job descriptions to train them, using the documented processes to train them. All of this stuff can be completed here in this control panel. So if I'm the manager of marketing and sales in a smaller company and I'm doing my own recruiting and hiring, I can have a group right like this that says, how do I recruit? How do I interview? How do I decide what I'm going to pay them? This was last week's System of the Week. And then how do I onboard them? So I can go to the recruiting process. I can go to the checklist. I fill this out. I did all these things for the new sales employees. Now anybody who's my manager who's wondering, did you put the ads in? Are you getting new people in? They can all go here and see that I actually have. And then I save this, so I did all that. I've screened the candidates. I've decided who to bring back. I can access all the forms here that I need. Here's the short interview questionnaire form. I can fill this out for every employee. I can put their name in, who I did it for, fill it out right here inside of TouchStone, save it. My manager could look at these score sheets and say, oh, look, she interviewed 10 5-minute interviews with 10 new candidates, and this is what came of it. They can review all these and decide, based on all the data I collected, who they want to bring back for a longer interview. So the interviewing process is the same way. You can go to this interviewing one, fill out the behavioral worksheets, fill out the questionnaires, put all that back in, do the score sheets, and then all the way to new employee onboarding, all of these tools. So I can fill out the checklist that I prepared for the employee. I can fill out the checklist that I went through the first day training with them. I could fill out the onboarding checklist to see that I went through those steps for 30 and 90 days. So all of this is then being captured inside a TouchStone. It's like the evidence that I've followed these processes, reminding me of what to do and verifying that I did them. And then anybody who has access to my information here, these people, if they have any question about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, they can always look at it and see it. So it's less interruptions and less wondering, did that happen? Is that being followed?